Welcome to The Author Next Door, where hosts Angela Haas and Cassie Newell chat about the wild world of writing and publishing. Join them for weekly episodes and special monthly guests. Pull up a chair. The conversation starts now. Welcome to episode 19. I'm Angela Haas, and I'm here with my co-host, Cassie Newell. And this month, we're talking about finding industry professionals that are going to help you with your author journey. But before you can do that, we think it's best if you look inward and try to understand yourself better, which is why some authors take personality tests and some groups and teachers want you to also take personality tests, just so that you can have a better understanding of who you are as a writer. But it also helps you understand who you'll work with better along the way. So the three tests we're going to talk about today are the CliftonStrengths, Myers-Briggs, and the Enneagram, what we are and our experiences with them. Remember, when you get on a plane, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first before helping others, right? We're going to start by looking at us, taking care of us, and then it helps us connect better with those around us. So, Cassie, why don't you start?
Why don't I start?
You've taken all these three tests. Which one do you like better?
Yeah, and I've taken a number of these and the DISC profile as well.
Oh, yeah.
In my professional setting, right? So the Myers-Briggs I took years and years ago. And then in 2023, I took it again just for, kicks and giggles. Because, sometimes it's always fun to check in with that to see if anything's changed. And it had, I believe, on one letter, but that was it. But I'm an INFJ, which we can go into that a little bit. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's kind of me, sorta, kinda. I also took the Enneagram, and this was part of a course that I took. Actually, it was around authors, something Becca Syme offered. So you took the Enneagram as well as your CliftonStrengths. And for the Enneagram, I'm an 8 challenger. And it also is a very robust report, more so than Myers-Briggs, in that it talks about your various wings of this type of Enneagram personality number. And I just found it really cumbersome for me. I didn't really understand it. Some of it, I was like, yeah, okay, sure, but not all of it. And when I took the CliftonStrengths, it was like voodoo science to me, because I was like, oh my God, that's me on a page. When you take the full 34, you get like this theme report and these other signature reports. And I just remember reading it going, oh my gosh, that is me, because it tells you kind of what you do really well. And in those certain strengths, what may not go very well for you, kind of your opposites and things to look out for. And I was like, wow, I've done that in my life. These are the things. And so for me, CliftonStrengths, I think, resonates the best for me. How about you?
For me, the CliftonStrengths really was helpful because it really gave me so much more detail. It actually helped me understand how I work as an author and my writing process and how I, put a story together, because there was a time when I get so frustrated with myself where I'm like, man, I just don't have this skill. Why can't I write like this person? Why can't I do this really well when I'm writing? And my CliftonStrengths are all thinking strengths, strategy strengths. And so that helped me so much understand, because when I write, I'm so about stitching the plot together. It's like a puzzle. I'm putting pieces together. I'm thinking the plot, the strategy. I do have strengths that allow me to build characters well, in that I'm always in my just normal life wondering how people work, like what makes people tick, why do people make the decisions that they do? And that helps me with characters, but I struggle with weaving in the emotional beats. And I've had editors be like, you need a lot more emotion in this scene. And I'm like, okay, well, she did just lose her mother. And I'm like, yeah, she should probably cry or something. Not that basic. But I'm just like, oh, yeah, because that comes later for me as far as like
what I think through first. But once I took the CliftonStrengths and I started to understand that, I was like, wow, okay, so I can stop being so hard on myself and understand how to better make my personality work for me when I'm writing.
Right.
So that helped, but I also gravitate to the Myers-Briggs because I do a lot of training with that. But since we both like CliftonStrengths, maybe we should talk about what ours are. I know that when you're in author circles, they kind of focus on the top 5 or 10.
Yeah.
And for listeners who don't know, the CliftonStrengths, it's a little bit more of a comprehensive test. I know if you follow Becca Syme or Sasha Black, they refer to this a lot. And they also, when you're taking their courses, encourage you to take this. But it's through Gallup, which does a lot of polling. It's a more intensive, comprehensive test. But I know that you focus on your top 10. And how are they divided? It's thinking.
Yeah, so I pulled out my little workbook here. So it's executing themes, and that's how you make things happen. Influencing themes that help you take charge, speak up, make sure others are heard. Relationship building themes, which help you build strong relationships that hold a team together. And then strategic thinking, themes that help you absorb, analyze information, and inform better decisions. So it's really these 4 themes across 34 pieces of personality, if you will. And they're just kind of color coded that way when you get your report. And I use this also in my corporate life, in my day job too, because I find I know where I lean into in that job. So it's really interesting to me. So I use it both creatively and from a corporate perspective.
Awesome. Yeah. And what are your top 10 just for us?
Sure. So I tend to, as I was learning CliftonStrengths, I really recommend people really hone in on their top 5 and then kind of go to your next 5 and then your next 5, because I don't go really beyond 15 at this point. But my number 1 is relator, which is a relationship building theme. And what's funny is it's the only blue, it's color coded. It's the only blue I have in my top 10, which I know helps me write dialogue and develop dynamic characters. So that's a natural strength for me. The second one is not my favorite strength. It takes me down rabbit holes, but it's maximizer. It's an influencing strength. And I'm just going to say right now, it's very odd for most women, but I'm a high influencing strength person. So most of the influencing strengths are in my top 10. So maximizer is number 2, significance is number 3. And then I get an executing strengths, which is achiever at number 4. And then I have a strategic thinking one, which is strategic at number 5. Then 6 is command. 7 is communication. 8 is self-assurance. 9 is learner. And 10 is activator. And ending there on an influencing strength. So what about yours?
Well, mine actually have a lot of oranges or yellows. So mine are a lot of influencing themes. I have 1 relationship building in the top 10, a couple strategic, and then executing. But my number 1 is strategic. And I think that's where my strength of plot building comes from, because I'm always thinking of holes, and I really love putting that plot together. Number 2 is individualization, and that's where you really love understanding what makes people tick and what makes people the individuals they are. And I think that helps me with characters, but it also helps me as a manager in my retail life, because when you're working on a team, you really have to understand, okay, well, this person's strengths are this, so I'm going to put them in customer service. This person is more introverted, but they're more analytical, so I'm going to put them in the warehouse doing data entry. It really helps you put people where they're supposed to be. 3rd is communication. And this was something interesting that I learned about myself, is that I always had to hire, in the beginning of my writing career, a coach, because I needed to talk out loud to someone about problems or places I was getting stuck. When I talk out loud, it helps me process better. And so I was just like, wow, I knew I was doing it, but I didn't know why. And that also helps me understand sometimes when we're leaving WhatsApp messages, you may not get them till the morning, but the fact that I can talk out loud if I'm having a plot problem, that piece is so helpful. And then it's activator, input for my top 5, analytical, competition, maximizer, focus, significance. So, and then the relationship ones are so at the bottom, like harmony, includer.
Yeah, but what I love about CliftonStrengths that makes it so different from a lot of the other personality tests that I've taken before, and this is what I love about it. When you dig in, the idea is that don't even look at the bottom. A lot of corporate tests, and when you look at these personality tests, oh, well, if you want to improve on this, you start doing activities to improve those personality keys that are at the bottom. CliftonStrengths is like, don't worry about it. Lean into what you're naturally good at and 300x it versus 100xing it. And what that means is, for example, and I'm just going to use a very layman term thing. Let's just say I'm a really fast reader naturally. Angela is not. And we both want to continue to work on being fast readers. Well, I will X my reading speed just because I'm practicing at it. She may get to 100x, but she'll never surpass me. But let's just say she's a faster writer than I am, right? She should be doing that thing. So it's, even though I'm talking task-based, that's what the personality side of things are. So when you were talking about strategic, for example, like figuring out the puzzle, and it may not be in like the perfect package up front, but you can do that later, right? That's kind of how you're writing. I'm writing from I love character-based stories. Everything to me, a character drives a story. So I don't look at setting as the driving piece usually. And if I do have a setting, like for example, a novel I'm working on, I make it a character so that it's a little bit more resonant for me as a writer, because relator is number one for me. So once you know those things and you kind of get hip to this language, and you know when things aren't going well for you, that the term that they use is balconies and basements, like you're in the basement right now for that one piece of your personality that's in your top 10, and you realize that, you know what to do in order to bring yourself back up to the baseline or even up into the balcony. And I find that really advantageous. My one strength that causes me the most problems early on is maximizer. Because what maximizer is something that's really good. I can see it and make it superb. That's what maximizer makes me do. And I know it. So I can just stop. I'm really like, nope, it's good enough. Good enough. I don't need it to be superb right now. Or I see that, let's say I've built something and I can see where I can tweak it to make it, X times better. In my head, I have to evaluate, is X time better really better?
Right.
Or is it just something that's needling me? And is it worth my time to do that? So that's the one that has caused me the most problems. And I have to be careful because for influencing strengths, and a lot of these, they tend to pair up well in certain ways too. So then I have to understand what it's pairing up with. So, yeah.
What was it like before you had that awareness as a writer?
Oh,
Was it just like, whoa?
it was almost confirmation. Like I said, voodoo science. Like when I realized I was a number one relator, I was like, no wonder I love dialogue and writing about characters. Like the first thing I think about isn't the setting. It's the characters, I think my why, very beginning of my young adult fantasy, it was all about having a female heroine that wasn't a victim who could save herself and those around her, right? It's like nothing to do with the fantasy world yet or any of this other stuff. You know what I mean? Like I knew her name. I knew what she looked like. I knew her personality. Like those were the things. That's what drives me. Yeah. And so when you know that, you just kind of lean in, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, my strength, I think that gets me in trouble is the input, because sometimes I get so caught up in trying to get information, I feel like I'm constantly craving that input. And then it's almost like, oh my gosh, there's too much information in here. Then I may not be able to sort through it very well. And then, especially when I partner that with something that we'll talk about with Myers-Briggs, where I'm like always generating new ideas and always getting input for those ideas, then I'm like, well, I love the fact finding and research part of this piece, but I'm actually not writing.
Right.
Sometimes I don't just start writing. You don't have to have every piece of research figured out, every, thing
Right.
all in place before you start. Sometimes it stops me from just beginning.
Yeah.
And that's what it helped me recognize that. And then like, okay, just write what comes to you. That's what I constantly have to tell myself when I spend so much time going down rabbit holes.
Right.
And I think the analytical part can also, that's so high too. I'm always like, yeah, but it could be this, but it could be this. Then I've got Maximizer in there. So I am so
welcome.
So spinning my wheels sometimes because I can't start until it's perfect or every character is completely fleshed out or everything.
Yeah.
That's where my strengths get in the way.
Well, my command helps guide me a lot
Mhm.
of the noise, which I'm happy I have it. I think learner for me too, like I have to watch myself on that because it's a lot like input for me, but I'm constantly learning, but I need to be physically learning a lot of the time and set aside time. So for me, like live classes, way better than self classes because I will get distracted. I'll get bored. I'll fast forward, especially if it's very lecture based because I just can't. At my age, I'm like, don't lecture to me. So yeah, I like practical things. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because significance, I used to really not like it. And now that I know more about it, and I think that's what's interesting to me too, is about CliftonStrengths and the combination of things. Like you tend to learn more and more as you're kind of in the community that is talking about it or studying it, and you can start to see it in some of your friends when you find out their CliftonStrengths. I made my entire family take the test. I was like, I want to know. And what amazed me was my husband was almost the exact same strengths in just different orders. He's a number one relator too. I was floored. I was like, wait, what? So I don't know. I find it really interesting, but I also think too, once you understand your top 10, you realize that some of your 15 is also very influencing too because of those combinations. But I never even look beyond that. So I just kind of studied my own. I don't know. I found it really helpful, very eye-opening, and almost, as I said, it was just almost confirmation of things that I thought. And then it allowed me to be really commanding and like, yep, I know, my self-assurance, that whole thing, like, okay, I got it, so yeah.
I have number 10 significance, but I think that gets in the way of me really accepting bad reviews.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, part of significance is you want your work to, you want to feel like it's making a difference. You want it to be meaningful, but when you put yourself out there and you work so hard and it means so much, and then someone gives you a 1 or 2 star, especially the ones that don't leave any feedback, they just give you 1 or 2 star, which we know those are trolls, but it's like hurtful because there's so much significance and meaning to my work that I'm not just like doing it willy-nilly. There's other strengths that help me deal with like letting that, you have to let that stuff roll off, because you get trapped into making it mean more than it should. So, but all of this to say, I think this is a great test, although there's other tests that you can do for free. I know for sure there's a cost to this one, correct?
Yeah.
At least
So
$50.
you can do the minimal cost, and I think you get like your top 5 or something in the themes report. I don't know. Last time I checked, I thought it was like $30 or something like that. I don't know.
30 to 50 maybe.
Yeah. And then Myers-Briggs, do you want to explain that, like the different letters, the 4 letters,
Sure.
and how that
Yeah.
works, since you're more familiar with that?
Yeah, I use this a lot because it helps in with our staff with group communication training, because each letter looks at different things. So the first letter is the direction we focus our attention and energy. The second one is the way we take in information. The third is the way we make decisions. And the fourth is the way we act in our outer world. But I also think it's kind of how you organize your life or how you plan your life. And the Myers-Briggs was created by Catherine Briggs and Isabel Myers. And it's based on the psychological types created by Carl Jung. So there is a lot of science behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, like I use 16personalities.com because over time, people have come up with different takes on it and different ways to offer it for free. So they're using the Catherine Briggs, Isabel Myers principles, but they're also putting their own spin on it. So if you go to 16personalities.com, that's the test that I give all my staff. It takes about 12 minutes and you can do it for free. And if you want a more intensive report, you can pay a cost. And I definitely think it's worth it. I love the Myers-Briggs because I learned about myself, but I learned about how to collaborate with others. It's important to do for me because I learned how to communicate how I work better with other people. For example, my Myers-Briggs is ENTJ. The E is extroversion. The other letter is I for introversion. And then the N for them is intuition, but that doesn't mean gut feeling. It's just the way they're calling, like how you take in information, versus S for sensing. The third one is thinking versus feeling, which is an F. And then the last one is perceiving versus judging. And that's just sort of you organize your life. But when you're working with people, and especially people, my coworkers, a lot of the communication breakdown came between extroverts and introverts because of the way that introverts communicate inwardly and extroverts communicate outwardly. So when there's a meeting and the introverts aren't participating, the extroverts think they don't care. The one that is the most eye-opening for me, or the two, are the second letter and the fourth letters, because I'm an N, which means I look at a picture and I see and make meaning and make sense out of what's in the picture. If you're a strong S, you're more of a systems-based, you're the analyst, you're sort of just making a list of what you literally see in the picture. So N's are like the idea makers, where S's are the systems people. Yes. And as N's, we make great writers because we have a bunch of ideas. We're able to like make a story out of nothing.
Right.
Whereas we need sometimes help from S's because they're the ones that are going to take that idea and help us implement it. I'm saying us as just general ends. I'm not saying you because you're a book coach, so you know how to do all this, but I'm saying just ends in general. And sometimes I have too many ideas. And that's where like understanding that part of my personality was like, okay, this is my idea machine going. I need to talk to someone who's more of a systems logistics person and they can help me. The fourth letter, perceivers, I love figuring things out as they go, where a judger, it's not sitting in judgment of someone. It's judging things in the way like how you plan your life. So J's are planners. We like to have deadlines. We love having limits. And that's how I function best. So I know I wasn't as effective in some writers groups because there were no deadlines. And there was just sort of like, do what you want, figure it out. And that is the opposite of how I do best. So again, all this understanding about how you function helps you collaborate with others better, but it also helps you create some pretty interesting characters if you know how to use these kinds of tests. But the Myers-Briggs didn't really speak to you as much as it does me. So why is that?
I just was like, Yeah, I mean, that's me, but it doesn't, to me, it just didn't dive into the more specifics where I feel like Clifton Strengths really, I mean, because you're looking at four main categories and then describing those categories in Myers-Briggs, to an overall picture. For me, the breakdown of the 34 individual pieces of a personality were just a little bit more meaningful. And then you've got also the themes of those personalities, and then you're seeing the visual grouping of it from a color coding perspective. Again, that might be the intuition piece. But you're seeing that and you're going, okay, so I really lean in with influencing. Okay, I get that, especially in my corporate life and in coaching to a certain degree. Maximizer, yeah, that makes me one of the best cheerleading coaches you could ever have.
Right.
But like, I don't know, I just like how, too, as you get into it, you can see that not everything is a super high balcony strength for you at all times. And you ebb and flow through your strengths. That's why they talk about knowing your top 10. Because you will ebb and flow. Like some days, my relator is going to be off, but my strategic's going to be firing. My communication and my command is hitting really hard. I do like to dictate writing. That actually helps me go really fast. When I really need to get an idea down, I have a shortcut on my keyboard and I just tap it twice and I start talking. And then sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm done talking, and I turn it off and I just start typing, and then I'm off to the races. I used to get irritated because I had FOMO with O-Write. I had a friend that likes the competition in O-Write. I was like, how am I going to do this? Because I'm just not. And then I was like, okay, shortcut with my keyboard. And then I'd be talking, and I'm sure they were thinking, good God, is she typing like 500 words a minute here? Talking it all out. But nonetheless, I can lean in and out, and I can tell when my self-assurance is hurting. Sometimes I don't readily see it. I've had coaches in the past who will be like, your relator's hurting and your self-assurance is hurting from this particular thing that happened. And I go, oh, okay. And then I go, oh, how do I repair that? Oh, I know. And I think it's just that the specific breakdown of all those things that makes it more powerful for me than Myers-Briggs.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally see that. And it's so valid. And that's why I love that we're talking about the three different ones that we know the most about, because I think you find one that that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And if that helps you and you can use it, that's great. For me, the Myers-Briggs, especially being extroverted, and many, but not all, authors we know tend to be more introverted.
Right.
And when I was on calls in the beginning, when I was just starting to join groups and meet new people, I would be the first one to speak every time. And then I wouldn't shut up because my communication is firing, because no one else was speaking or answering questions. But then I was like, you know what? Once the Myers-Briggs started to really resonate with me, and they started to understand how introverts focus their energy, because it's not that they're not involved. It's not even that introverts are shy either. It's just that they're a little bit more careful and thinking about what they're saying more, than instead of just like, I have what I call Hermione complex, where I'm like raising my hand and I know the answer immediately, and then I'm called upon, and then I think okay, just start talking and the answer will come to you. Whereas introverts, they're more careful with just blurting something out. So now when I'm on calls, I count to like 10 or 20 when someone asks who wants to go first, so that it gives space to the more introverted people to like actually speak, instead of like sucking all the air out of the call. And I had to learn that. And once I understood why I was doing it, then it's like, okay, that's a tool I can use to be better with groups. And then as far as like my planner, I learned right away that I wasn't going to work with this editor, because I said, when do you want this? When is my assignment due, basically? And they're like, whenever you want to get it in, whatever, it's open, we're just free, and I'll just pick it up whenever. And I was like, you're my editor. I don't think so. That doesn't, I'm not being critical of how that person works, but that I need that person to say, if you want this done by X date, I need it by this time. That
Right.
gives me a limit and a framework to work with. So that's how I'm using it, and that's how it makes sense with me. So
Yeah, that
but yeah,
makes sense.
different for
And
everyone.
see, being an E myself on the Myers-Briggs, I go, I know myself, and I'm really more of an ambivert.
Right.
I mean, I have a lot of extroversion tendencies, but I also have to recover. I also can be by myself and not speak. Like I'm comfortable in those kind of situations. I don't know. The more I learned about ambiverts, I go, yeah, I'm more of an ambivert than an extrovert. My husband, extreme extrovert. Me, I can play. I'm not that way all the time.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it's just good to know. And it gives us things we can use for building characters too. The
absolutely.
third one is the Enneagram. And that's
Yeah.
the one that I think for both of us, I've seen a lot of other authors refer to it. They build characters around it. But for me, I've taken it, it's almost too complicated for me. What is your Enneagram?
So my Enneagram is type 8, the challenger, and then my wings, I think, are the bear and something else. Don't ask me. But I know Claire Taylor has a book out about the Enneagram and how to utilize that as an author and building characters and all of that. It just didn't speak to me that much. I was kind of like, no, that's not really me. Maybe kind of, sort of. When I was reading it, it just didn't resonate. And I took it as a part of an author course that I was doing that was more specifically around CliftonStrengths. And it was something Becca Syme had. So you took a number of personality tests, including the CliftonStrengths, and that was helping them also in coaching you. So I just kind of never really dove into it a lot because I was more interested on the CliftonStrengths side. So just the cursory read that I had, I was just kind of like, yeah, okay. I mean, that was just kind of my thought process. And I think the disc one that I took in the corporate world, it was like influencing and dominating. And I was like, yeah, well, yeah, sure. It's just kind of some of these tests you go, sure, but it didn't resonate with me very well.
Yeah, it didn't for me as well because there's only 9 types, which
Yeah.
sounds like a lot, but I feel like it kind of put me in a box where it didn't quite, same. I took it and I was like, well, it's kind of me, but not really.
Yeah.
However, I think for listeners who don't know, again, you should try all 3. You can do, I think, some form of these for free because there's other websites that execute these tests, except for CliftonStrengths. I think you can only take that on their website.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to have because you might be in a group and someone asks you. And at least I know I'm Enneagram 1, which is the reformer, principled, purposeful, self-controlled, and perfectionistic. And yes, perfectionistic is definitely how I am as a writer. But then a lot of it goes into, wings and
I'm
it
just
just goes
looking at
in
mine
other
and I'm like,
directions where I'm like, I don't know.
I
It
know
says
it's
my basic fear is of being corrupt or evil or defective. And I gotta be honest, I don't know I mean, I have a fear that I can't stop eating the potato chips that I've started. I have a fear, I have much bigger fears, obviously, but we're not going into that in this episode. But like, I don't know that my principal navigating fear in the world is being corrupt or evil. Like that doesn't resonate.
Yeah. The only thing that resonated with me was it says that I tend to be more calm and passive than other typical 8s because the challenger is kind of in your face. And then there's this aspect of a maverick that tends to be more responsible and careful. And I was like, well, okay. I don't know. To me, it was just, I probably should like relook at it, maybe get more educated on it. But for me, I just kind of gravitated to CliftonStrengths because it resonated. I understand it.
Yeah.
And, I've kind of worked to understand my strengths specifically. Don't ask me about restorative adaptability. They're at the very bottom for me.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
The things I do know and I understand the themes too, I think it's helped me a lot in my personal life, my corporate life, and of course, my creative life. So, yeah.
There's some other websites. I think it's called Truity. I think that's a website where you can take a bunch of different personality tests as well. We'll put those in the show notes so that people can look at them. But again, I think it helps you understand yourself, and how to communicate yourself to others when you're collaborating can help you with characters, understanding and empowering your writing strengths and where your weaknesses may be. So personal updates. What's going on for you?
I had to think about this, but my personal bookshop is open.
That's exciting. So much work.
I know. Can't believe I was doing it, but I did it and made some decisions on how I was going to do it. And I'm kind of slow rolling, and I'm okay with that. I don't need all the fancy things. So I'm just happy people can purchase the print copies from me and things like that. And then my audiobooks have started. The recordings have begun. So that's super exciting for me too. What about you?
I am halfway finished with my next romance, and then have started the audiobook on My Plus One Equals You. So really excited about that. Just trying to write as much as possible and do all the other life things. So yeah, exciting.
Exciting.
You know what time it is.
Table topics. Bring it on.
Hello. That's a good one. All right. What would be the one good thing about being the opposite sex?
Peeing standing up.
If I had to guess what you're going to say, well, you know what? No, I'm not surprised. I'm not even shocked.
It's got to be the best, right?
Yeah, just a quick.
The other thing, never having to deal with a menstrual cycle. And
I
all of the activity. That's it. That's my answer.
I think that's my answer. It's just not having to, although men have their own things that they deal with, but yeah, not having.
Please, as another woman, is that even comparable?
It's just trying to be diplomatic for our male listeners. We love you guys.
Sorry, I'm just going to tell it like it is.
Yeah, the menstrual cycle thing, that is horrendous. It is, terrible. We're not going to go into that, because what we're going to do is thank our listeners for joining us today. Don't forget to give us a review and rating wherever you listen to the podcast. It really helps us with visibility. Next week, we are going to talk about some of our favorite industry professionals that we love and use. And we are going to talk about how to walk away or know when something isn't working out, and give you some tips and tools to maybe seek someone else if your collaboration isn't doing what you need it to do. So until then, keep writing, keep doing. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining today's episode of The Author Next Door. Be sure to follow, and tell us your thoughts of this week's episode. Angela and Cassie would love to hear from you.